Benvenuto to the next episode of Overcoming Graduation. Now, that is welcome in Italian, and the reason I chose Italian to start off today's show is not because I know the language, but because my guest is Tiamo De Vettori. So his name, Tiamo, his first name, actually means I love you in Italian. So there's a little lesson for you if you want to go and spread some love. Now, Tiamo is a musician with a story unlike one I've ever heard before in my life. And you're going to hear today how Tiamo made a decision 2 days before graduating from college solely based off his intuition that put him on a course that changed his life forever. He moved to Virginia and just started singing karaoke at bars, and then that developed into him starting to learn guitar, writing his first song, growing a following, moving to San Diego, continuing to grow that following, and then reaching a point where the following started to peter off. And you'll hear his story about how he reached a point that was so low that he felt justified in giving up on his passion and his purpose. But you'll also hear how Tiamo distinctly defines the difference between passion and purpose. Passion comes and goes, but your purpose stays with you forever. So although he left music for a while, like a phoenix from the ashes, he came back and lived his purpose and made a decision that he would never play for anything less than a sold-out crowd from that point on. And you'll hear in his story how he accomplished that and how he's been on national television since then, how he now coaches other musicians with his sold-out crowd formula to teach them how they can live a life pursuing their passion for music and making a great living and feeling a fulfilled life doing it. So for anybody who wants to be a musician, this is going to be a great one for you. For anyone else who has been down on their luck, been beaten down, been pushed down to the point where you thought it was okay for you to let go of your purpose, here is a story you need to hear. So everybody, let's get started. This is going to be a doozy, and sit back, enjoy, and I look forward to hearing your comments in the comments section, and let's get it started. Hi everyone, this is Brian Drury, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Overcoming Graduation. Tonight I have a guest that has some stories that I think everyone who is about to graduate or who's just graduated need to hear. So sit down, just clear your mind, take everything else off the plate, because these stories and these lessons are going to be absolutely life-changing. So tonight I'm welcoming a new friend of mine, Tiamo. And Tiamo, thank you for being on the show, man.
You're welcome, Brian. I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
I've been dying to have this one because there's so many questions I have, and naturally, living by the train tracks, as soon as we start the interview, a train comes by. It'll pass quickly, but that's how life goes. You got to just roll with it sometimes. But
totally.
Tiamo is a man who has had a passion for music. I imagine it's been your whole life, right, Tiamo?
Well, I've been a lover of music my whole life, but as far as creating music and performing it, that's not so much the case.
Right. So
yeah,
what Tiamo is going to tell us is a story about how music has changed his life. He also left me with a cliffhanger in the email the other day and said he has a story about how his intuition, right around his graduation, he made a decision guided entirely by his intuition that changed his life forever. And I think this is the type of thing that the listeners in this age, this demographic, are terrified to do. This is the decision they're terrified to make, but sometimes the things that scare us most are the things we need to do the most. So, Tiamo, if you could tell us this story of you're a young guy, you're about to graduate, I would love to hear how you progressed from being a person who's, a kid in school, leaving school, to a man who sang a song at a conference that literally brought me to tears and actually helped me reminisce in such a profound way about my mom, who I lost to cancer. And I can't thank you enough for that, man, because combining music and that message was just absolutely beautiful. So I'd love to hear this story.
Well, thank you. I'm going to give your audience a little bit of a background in saying that when I was a kid, I was very into music, and I was performing both as a solo musician, a singer, and in band and things like that. And at the time, my father was a singer-songwriter and an opera singer. Okay. So he is very talented and proficient in music. And as I got into high school, I really, in my own way, started to rebel against that because I wanted to find my own identity and walk my own path. And so I built this sort of resistance where I walked away from the music, even though I love music, but I just no longer had that desire to do it anymore. And then when I got to college, it was an incredible experience for me because then I was able to develop all these other sides of my personality, particularly around leadership and community service and getting involved and also being a lot more involved in sports and things like that. And so, it was really like a budding of my personality, but it no longer involved doing music. I really, going into college, I developed this love and this passion for helping people. So I got my bachelor's degree in psychology, and I was going to go into a master's program. I was really at the precipice of graduating and then deciding what I wanted to do, which I know so many undergraduates are faced with.
Right.
And for me, even though I was looking at the, going into a master program route, I still was a little shaky about that. Like I wasn't certain about my future. And so I just decided, well, maybe what I need to do is graduate and then I'll get a job and then maybe have a job for a few years and eventually explore post-graduation. So it was about, I was getting ready to graduate from the University of Arizona. And I had talked to my parents about, right after graduating, I was going to go home for the summer and, live with them at home and while I applied for jobs and see what I could get in the Phoenix area. So that was really the plan. And I know that's a pretty traditional, common plan that a lot of college students who are graduating have.
Right.
So what happened is 2 nights before graduating, I woke up in the middle of the night and I had this intense intuition that I needed to move to Virginia. Now, I had no idea what was in Virginia. There was no job opportunity there. There was no woman I was chasing. There was nothing that made sense.
So no family, no friends. It was just something in your heart or in your mind said, you got to go to Virginia.
Exactly.
Wow.
And I didn't know why, I just could feel the power of that intuition. And I couldn't go back to sleep, and I couldn't stop thinking about this. And I woke up the next morning, I called my mom, and I told my mom that I'm not coming home for the summer, and I need to move to Virginia.
Wow.
And that's how unshakable and how certain I was. And of course, that was really hard for her because she was so excited about her son coming back home.
Naturally, as most moms would be. Yep.
Of course. And it was really hard for me because I was also so ready to graduate and come back home and relax for a little bit and then plan out my future. But I just couldn't turn off this intuition.
Right.
And I told my mom that, and of course it was hard for everybody, but later that day she called me back and she said, Tiamo, I want you to know that, we support you in your decision, and she's taught me up until that point to always follow my intuition in life. And so she's like, I want everything for you, and if this is what you need to do, then I completely support you with that, and I want to help you in getting you a plane ticket to go out there.
That's fantastic.
And, yeah, it was amazing, and I thanked her for that. And but I had this desire to take the Greyhound bus.
Okay.
So rather than fly out there, what happened is I graduated on that Saturday from college, and then on Monday, I was on a Greyhound bus. I packed one bag, and I was headed for Virginia, not knowing what was waiting for me.
And at this point, you didn't have a place to stay. You didn't know who was there or where you were really even going in Virginia. You were just going to Virginia.
That's right.
Wow. And And just for a second, Tiamo, for the listeners, for the young people that are about to graduate and you have this pull, this feeling, something in your heart that is just screaming at you to say, take this shot, take this chance, you're young. You're free of a lot of responsibilities that many people who are slightly older, further along in life, you don't have those responsibilities. So if there's ever a time to do it, you're never going to be younger than you are right now. So Tiamo did it. This is an example. This is a guy who I met. And as his story progresses, you're going to see why this was the best decision he could have made. So don't be afraid to embrace your passion and your greatness. So, all right, Tiamo, you're on the bus. And what happens next?
So, thank you for making that point, because I know so many young adults who are graduating from college, there's this path that they're supposed to take, which is, go get a job.
Right.
Or go into graduate work.
Or like you, they say, I'm going to go home for a while and figure it out. And
figure it out.
What happened to me whenever I went home after college, I just sit around and be lazy, honestly.
Or that.
Right.
Yeah. That's option C. That's right.
Fortunately,
I'm on the bus.
Go ahead,
and I'm just, I had like 3 days to just think about this adventure and who I want to be and like this open canvas of my life. And so I arrived in Virginia and, eventually I got a job as a waiter. And, I really enjoyed that. It was a lot of fun. And I was just, the nice thing was I was working at night. So during the day, I could kind of explore my interests and, all kinds of stuff. And so what I started to do during the day in my free time was I started writing a lot. Because I've always had a love for writing.
Writing music or writing books, or what was it specifically?
So I was writing poetry.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so I started writing poetry and I fell in love with that, and then eventually that ascended to writing a book. So I was, really searching for my calling. I felt like I had these words inside of me. I felt like I had this transformational message that I wanted to share with the world, but I didn't quite know in what outlet that was going to happen. And so I thought, well, maybe I should write a book. So I started writing this book called Imagination. Mm-hmm. And I started to send my manuscript to book publishers, and I wasn't having a lot of success with that, and I was getting more and more frustrated. And then, in my job as a server, I ended up meeting this guy. His name is Ray, and he became my best friend. And, Ray and I would have a lot of conversations around, like, I'm searching for my purpose, and I don't know what it is, and I thought it was a book, but nothing's happening with that, and I want to be in front of people, and so I would share that with him, and I'd also share my poetry, and it just so happens that at night and on the weekends, we go out with friends, and we go out to karaoke nights. And I would get up and I would sing, and I would get like the whole place going, like everybody singing with me. And I was that guy that like got everybody involved. And I loved it, but just for fun.
Right, yeah. And
so over time, Ray noticed that I had some talent there, and I had a voice, and I had some stage presence and charisma. And, he also knew about my poetry, my writings and things like that. And as I continued to get more and more discouraged about like not knowing what my calling is, one day he called me and he said, Tiamo, I know what your calling is. He said, you're meant to be a singer-songwriter.
Wow, that's amazing.
Now, the reason why I initially gave the background when we first opened this conversation is because when he said I should be a singer-songwriter, then I had all kinds of resistance around that. Mm-hmm. And I said, Ray, thank you so much for that amazing idea, but, I don't have any interest. I don't want to learn or relearn any music instruments. I don't want to take lessons. I don't want to practice every day. Like, I had 100 reasons why that wasn't for me.
I see. Because of your history and what your father's relationship had meant to music, that's where that resistance was coming from.
Yeah, like there was a lot of subconscious stuff going on and all kinds of resistance. So I just felt like that's not for me, but thank you, and I'm still going to explore what my calling is. And I was still pursuing this book idea and sending out manuscripts, and still nothing was happening, and nothing was happening with the poetry. And so, basically like a year goes by, and I'm not open to the music idea.
Okay.
And after numerous attempts, then one day my friend calls me again. He says, Tiamo, I've had it. He's like, as your best friend, I am coming over to your house, and we're going to go guitar shopping, and I'm going to buy you a guitar. And you just have to keep one promise as my friend. And he said, that promise that you have to keep is that you just let your guitar sit in the living room where you can see it every day. You don't have to pick it up. You don't have to play it.
Wow.
All you have to do is let your guitar sit there where you can see it every day, and that's it.
Wow.
So we go guitar shopping. He buys me a guitar. And I keep my promise, and I let my guitar just sit there in the living room where I can see it every day.
Mm-hmm. And
it sits there on a guitar stand for a couple of months, and nothing happens.
And Tiamo, had guitar been one of the instruments you played earlier in life, or was it totally new to you?
Totally new. So I've never played guitar.
So this foreign, strange instrument is just sitting in your apartment staring at you, and a couple months go by, and then what happens?
So I'm supposed to go into work, but it's like a really stormy, rainy night, and I call in and they say, it's really slow tonight, Tiamo, you don't need to come in. So I'm like, perfect, I'm in my PJs, and I'm like, I'm going to get all cozy, and I'm just going to get on my couch and finish reading my book that I was reading. So there I am, I'm sitting there, I'm reading my book, and as I'm reading, I get another intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I look up at the guitar, and it just wants me to come over and pick it up. So I walk over to the guitar, and I sit down on the couch, and I've got the guitar in my lap. And I'm kind of like, in my head, I'm like, I don't know what to do with this thing. But my heart says, just play. So I start strumming these chords on the guitar.
And did you know, were you looking up chords, or was it just whatever your fingers felt you went for?
Well, my friend Ray had his own guitar, so he showed me at one point what a D chord looked like, okay. Because he loved playing guitar. Mm-hmm. And even though I wasn't interested, I remembered that. So I'm like, well, I think this is a D chord, So I start strumming the guitar, playing this D chord. And as I'm playing that chord, then some other notes kind of happen, and I don't know what notes they are or anything, but it just sounds right. Mm-hmm. And as I'm strumming the guitar, I also start singing this melody. And as I start singing this melody, then all these words, all these lyrics come rushing through me. And as these lyrics are coming through me, then I get my notepad out and I start writing all these lyrics down. And then about a half an hour later, I wrote my first song.
Wow. The first time you ever picked up a guitar, just based off intuition, you wrote your first song.
Yes.
Wow.
So then I called up my friend, and I'm like, Ray, I just wrote my first song. And, of course, he's, going crazy over the phone. And I sing it for him over the phone. And he was like, that's, what an amazing song. And I think that, if I can remember, I think that was a Sunday night. And so he's like, here's what we're going to do. He said, we're going to get all of our friends together. And there's an open mic night on Thursday. And we're going to get everybody to come out and hear the song.
Wow.
So I'm like, all right, I've got nothing to lose. Let's do it. So I show up to that open mic night with this one song that I can barely play. And there's roughly we get 25, 30 friends to come out. And in total, there's, maybe 40 or maybe even 50 people in the audience for this open mic night.
That's a good size audience for an open mic.
I know, it was really nice. And so it's my turn, and I get up there on stage, and I start singing this one song that I know. And in the middle of the song, I felt this deep connection with the audience that I've never felt before. And it was a thing that I've been searching for. And when I was done with the song, I seriously had like a line of people just giving me hugs and telling me how much that song touched them. And in that moment, I understood that that was my calling.
That is so amazing. And just to pause you for one sec, because there's so many lessons and there's so many points in there, but the one that really stands out to me, and I want to call out for the listeners, is when you heard Tiamo tell the story and he had this intuition, it said, just play, just pick it up. And much like everyone uses the Nike analogy of just do it. Just getting started is sometimes the hardest thing to do. So when you follow that intuition, just when it speaks up, listen, just try once. And Tiamo went from playing a song one day to a few days later realizing his calling and his purpose in life. That's how quickly it can happen. So this is great, man. So I've heard the next portion of the story, which I'm even more excited for the listeners to hear, because now with this background, it makes it an even more. It's a fantastic story about finding your purpose and following it in your life.
Yeah. So eventually, I had this one song, and I thought, well, maybe I should write another one, and then. People started asking me when my next show is, and so I started writing more songs. And then my goal became, well, one day, I want to come out with a CD, and I'll have like the CD cover, and I could sell out my shows, and it was so innocent. But that was just my small goal. It wasn't anything like I'm going to become a singer-songwriter as a career or get famous or any of that stuff. It was just like, wow, if I actually came out with a CD, that would be unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And, eventually, as I started writing more songs and growing some support, I did come out with my first album. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget selling my first CD. Like, it was surreal, like, oh my God, people actually pay for my music, And,
of course. Yeah.
And it was really electrifying. And so what happened is, after a couple of years in Virginia, I knew doing this that, like, I was clear on what my purpose was. Mm-hmm. And
how old were you at this point, Tiamo, when you sold your first CD?
Yeah, at that point I was probably, I would say 22, 23 maybe, roughly 21 or 22, 23, I think.
Yeah, so just barely out of college, and you sold your first CD,
just like
made your first
couple
album.
Years out of college. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up moving to San Diego. Mm-hmm. And once I got to San Diego, I really built on my momentum with this, and I developed, over a span of a few years, having been in San Diego, I grew a really nice local fan base here.
Okay.
And, I had my albums, and I started winning awards, and I started having, bigger shows, and having a lot of people involved, like having a team around me. And it was such an amazing time for me. But what happened is, over a span of time, I had this big burst of like this growth, but then less and less people started coming out to my shows. And I started to get really discouraged about that, because I had so much momentum, and rather than building on that, fewer people were coming out. And so this time in my life, I really needed to reposition how I did things. And I ended up going to a personal development seminar, and I got re-motivated, and I got all kinds of clarity, and I thought, what, instead of doing a ton of smaller shows, why don't I do one big comeback breakthrough concert? Right. And so I worked on that, and I got booked at my dream venue in San Diego that holds over 500 people.
And what's this venue called?
I'm actually not going to name the venue.
Okay.
Just out of respect for them.
No problem.
Yeah,
I understand.
But thanks for asking. Yeah. Because I also tell this other story about the venue that I won't today, but I'd rather just keep it kind of discreet. So
I understand. Keep going, man.
Yeah. So I get booked at this venue in San Diego, and I've got 6 months to prepare for this concert.
Mm-hmm.
And I committed to promoting this concert every single day for 6 months.
Wow. Oh my God.
And I actually did that.
Wow.
And about 2 weeks before the concert, I recruited my top 20 fans in San Diego to go out in downtown San Diego over the weekend and pass out over 10,000 flyers. So I've got like this army of fans, and we passed out 10,000 flyers. I've been promoting this concert for 2 weeks. And the night of the concert, I'm sitting backstage in the green room. And as I'm sitting there, I'm meditating and I'm visualizing how I want the concert to go. And I see myself out there on stage, and it's a sold out crowd, and I give the concert of my life, and I'm just like, that's how I see it happening. Mm-hmm. And then someone knocks on the door. They say, Tiamo, we're ready for you. And so I'm backstage now, and I walk out onto the stage. And as I step in front of the microphone, I look out into the audience, and there were 2 people in the audience.
Oh my gosh.
And my heart just completely sank. Mm-hmm. But like a true entertainer, I performed for those 2 people like it was a sold out crowd. Mm-hmm. And it was so hard to make it through this hour set, but I did. And once the concert was done, I went backstage, packed up my guitar, I got in my car, I drove away, and as I was driving away, I remember calling my mom and telling her what had happened. And as I was sharing that, tears were just streaming down my face. Yeah. Because that was the breaking point for me. Like, I felt like I had done everything I could. And worst of all, Brian, is that I felt justified in giving up on my dream.
Oh my God, wow.
Because I was like, look what just happened. That's the ultimate sign that I'm not supposed to be doing this.
Yeah, it's you discovered what you believed was your calling. You started to have success, started to peter off, and you say, you know what, I'm going to put myself, mind, body, and soul into this. You give it everything you've got. You hand out 10,000 flyers. You're convinced that this is going to be it, and then you kind of put all of your hope on it, and it is not even close to the experience you expected. And I mean, I've never heard someone say that, and I really appreciate you saying that, because I know a lot of the listeners feel that. So, all right, so you hit this point, you felt justified in giving up, and what happens next?
So I tell my mom I quit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't do this anymore. And so I did. Mm-hmm. And I walked away from my music for quite a bit of time. And eventually, months later, like, I had this inner voice that was like in a form of a question. And it sort of asked me, like, Tiamo, if you could perform in front of all these sold out crowds, would you reopen your heart again to your music? And my answer to that question was a huge yes. Mm-hmm. But I had no idea how that would happen. Because obviously, if I knew how to perform in front of sold out crowds, I would have done it a long time ago.
Right, yeah.
Right? So, it felt good, and it was a big yes for me, but like my head was like, but I don't know how that would happen. I don't know where to even begin with that. But then my heart and my intuition came in again. And it said, just give it time, you'll find a way.
Okay.
So, as I'm looking at other things that I'm doing with my life and just growing as a person and as a hopeful entrepreneur, I'm at another personal development seminar. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there in this conference, and there's like thousands of people there. And I'm looking around, and then I look up on stage, and I realize, oh my God, like, what if I got up on that stage and I performed my music in a way that would complement the entire message and theme of the seminar? Then I would have an instant audience.
Yeah.
Where I didn't have to do anything to get them here.
Mm-hmm.
So then the light bulb went off, and I was like, oh, like I could totally have this niche where I perform at conferences and conventions and trainings and seminars and workshops where people already are. And not only that, but I could probably get paid really well to do it.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I started exploring that, and I started introducing myself to seminar leaders and getting on their stages and performing in front of, to start off with, hundreds of people and then eventually thousands of people, where all I had to do was walk on stage with my guitar and sing.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually, as I got better with this, I designed what I call my sold-out crowd formula.
Mm-hmm.
And I really was following that. And as that grew and grew and grew, I started making more money with my music than I was at my corporate day job.
Wow. That had to be a pivotal day, the day that all of a sudden your passion becomes not only more fulfilling, but more profitable than your corporate day job.
Yeah. And the ironic thing is my day job was I was working at a university.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I was doing both at the same time. So while I had my job, I was working on my dream. And I know that, you know, it sounds very Hollywood and heroic to say, just leave your job no matter what and work on your dream. Like, I was not a believer in that.
Right.
I was a believer on I can work on my dream while I have my job so that I can invest in myself.
Yeah, that's my same mentality.
Yeah. So, you know, there I was, you know, I had my job, but I was working on my dream on nights and weekends. I was able to invest in myself a little bit. And I was, you know, growing my fan base again and then making more money with my music than my job. And even though that was happening and it was becoming more and more consistent, eventually when I was faced with the possibility of leaving my job, I was terrified.
Right.
Because my job was my comfort zone. I had all the benefits. I had, like, you know, it's like an income I could count on. And
it's your safety blanket. That's what's keeping you warm. And just it's like, it's okay. If anything, if this doesn't work out, I've still got this.
Yeah. But eventually, I reached my freedom day, which is the day that I had enough courage to leave my job. And that was 4 years ago. And since then, it's just been an unbelievable journey of not only finding my niche and performing and making a really great career out of it, but then also teaching others how to do that too. And so it's like this whole other purpose emerged, which was, you know, how can I empower other musicians to do their music full time so that they can share their gift with the world? And how can I help other people overcome their fears and find the confidence to step into their dream, whether it's full time or to just get their message out into the world? And so it's kind of like I have a deeper understanding now of, like, the music is the outlet and the instrument for that to happen, but it's all the same message.
Yeah.
And the coaching that I do now and the motivational speaking that I do now and the music that I do now is all revolving around the same message, which is empowering people to face their biggest fears, listen to their intuition, and follow their dreams. Because I know for me, had I not listened to that intuition numerous times, there's no way I would have found this career path. There's no way I would have found this purpose. And I can't imagine my life without that.
And you know what I was thinking, Tiamo, as you've been telling this story, if you hadn't suffered through those really difficult, tragic, hard times, you wouldn't be able to relate to the singer who just had their first first performance where only one person showed up. You wouldn't have had those relatable experiences so that you can talk to them, connect to them, and show them, guys, I went through the same thing. You know, I've been there too. And just because I've achieved this level of success now and this level of comfort and excitement, it wasn't always, you know, this way. And by having those challenges, I've found more and more, like, in our lives, we're connected by our struggles in so many ways. And so by taking your challenges and bringing that to your music, your motivation, you're able to connect with so many more people. Because if you just said, oh, you know, I'm perfect, I had it all figured out from square one, people would be like, well, I can't relate to that. I think that's why so many people I'm not a singer-songwriter, and your songs, when you sang Freedom Day, which I highly recommend to the listeners, Freedom Day, fantastic, because it's all about just liberation and going for what you believe in. But I connected to it, even not being a singer-songwriter, because the messages transcend music and transcend one industry. It's about just being you and not being afraid to step into your greatness.
Yeah, that is so well said.
Thank you.
It's so true. And you know, that adversity, I know in the moment it's not fun, and not only is it not fun, it's scary.
Right.
And but it's to me, I see it as my greatest blessing.
Mm-hmm.
Because what it did is it forced me to find a new way. So I was trying to make it in music like everybody else out there, and it wasn't working. Mm-hmm. And in order for me to find this new creative pioneering way to do it, I had to experience something that was frustrating enough to where I could finally see this new door possibility.
Right.
And I really committed, something I didn't share in this story is, you know, once I decided to come back and pursue my music again, I committed to not performing at coffee shops and clubs and bars ever again. Because in order for the field of possibility to open up, there are things we have to say no to.
Yes, so critical.
And the no for me at that time, which I'm not saying everybody should do that, because it serves a great purpose.
Yeah.
But the no for me at that time was, that doesn't work for me anymore. I want to step into a higher vibration, a higher energy field, which is, I only want to perform in front of sold-out crowds. Mm-hmm. And I'm committing to that, and only that. Right. And I think when I had that focus, and when there was no backdoor exit, when there was no way for me to say, you know what, let me just kind of start doing the coffee shop scene again, and all of that, when I didn't even allow that as a possibility, then I felt like the energy came with me. Right. So that I can do this in a newer way and a bigger way.
That is, and I think it's so critical. What you said about saying no is that oftentimes people feel like when they start a business, get into a new job, new company, go to a new place, they need to say yes to everything. Now, I believe there is incredible power in saying yes to life and to experience, but also there is incredible power in saying no to the things that don't align with who you are and what you know your life is meant to be about. Because when you try to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one and just losing sight of who you are. So for you, saying no to coffee shops and anything less than a sold-out crowd turned into this life-changing, transformational experience. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because you took away plan B, because I heard Will Smith say, he's like, there's no point in having a plan B because it distracts you from plan A. So that was great. And so we're coming down on our final minutes here, Tiamo. This has been so great, and there's the train celebrating this too. You know, the train is excited about the interview.
Yeah.
I'm gonna name the train, and that'll be a character on my shows. I think
you should.
They pop up every time. But
yes.
So in our last minutes, I have 2 more questions for you. One I ask everyone, and one you're going to be the first one I've asked. So
great.
The first thing is, at this point, how old are you now, if you don't mind sharing?
I am 38.
38, okay. So now that you're 38, I feel very often people look back and say, if only I'd known this when I was younger. If only I'd known blank. So what I like to ask people, and the whole point, my intent in doing this is having the person talk to these young people, my age, at the just graduating college age, to share their message. So what I like to ask is, if you could go back and talk to yourself at graduation or just before it, what are the messages you would want to share with your younger self about life, about dreams, goals, and stepping into your greatness?
I would share so many things.
How much time do we have?
I know. So I'm trying to think about what would be the most important thing I would share. Mm-hmm. I think, I would really talk about, I would reinforce my ability to face my fears. Mm-hmm. And that fear is the only thing in the world that gets smaller as you run toward it. And to not be afraid of it. Mm-hmm. To be decisive. And to understand that purpose is bigger than passion.
Okay.
I think I was searching for a passion. Something that I would love to do, but to me, purpose is totally different.
And what is purpose to you?
To me, purpose is the thing you are, not the thing you're trying to be.
Wow. Dude, I never heard that, but I love that. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That is so
good. Purpose is like, I'm going to work on this every day, and I love it. But here's the thing about purpose is that, passion.
Right.
The thing about passion is that it can fade very quickly. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of massive action tied around passion. Mm-hmm. Which is great, but to me, purpose it never fades. Mm. It's like what you're here to do. Yeah. And you can't turn it off, like the ocean. You just can't turn it off. So, to me, like, I was searching for the passion, but when I found the purpose, even though there was a time where I was discouraged and I walked away, as you can tell, I couldn't stay away from it. Right. So, for me, I would say, Tiamo, like, really focus on what you feel your purpose is inside you. I would also say to my younger self that done is better than perfect.
That's great as well.
Yeah, because when you wait for perfect, nothing gets done.
Right.
And as a creative and as an artist, I've oftentimes been paralyzed in perfection. Mm-hmm. And I have, not put stuff out there because I wanted it to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And what's more important is that you just get it out there. Like this interview that we're doing, there's a train in the background, and, like whatever else. And who cares? It's like just get the message out there. So to me, that is something that I needed to learn. Mm-hmm. And I'd also share a new perspective about money. Mm-hmm. Which I've always thought that money is this thing that you have to work really hard for, and that you have to earn. Mm-hmm. And over the last few years, I work less and less, but I attract money more and more. And what I mean by that is I have a new definition for money, and it's helped me a lot. Which is money is an energetic currency of gratitude and appreciation for the gift you give the world. Yeah, so, I think like after college, like there are times where money was really hard and I just felt like it was something that you had to force. Mm-hmm. And now it's more like I'm just being my purpose and then the money follows it. Right. There's a huge difference there. And the last thing I would say, two more things. Okay. Is to take consistent action. Mm-hmm. To me, that is such a huge key. Not bursts of action, but consistent action. Right. And to really, really have mentors. Yes. Mm-hmm. Because I know that there's no way I would have got to where I am right now without mentorship, without people who could tell me about things that didn't work and things that do work. Mm-hmm. And I know for me being a mentor to other people, I try to share what's happened in the last 15 years that didn't work so I can save them 15 years. Right. Mm-hmm. And then tell them my best stuff about what does work. Mm-hmm. And then all they have to do is listen and then follow it. and then apply it. So those are probably the biggest things I would say, on top of just really living in the moment and loving life.
Those are great. I think everyone who's listening, rewind that, listen to that whole bit again, because every one of those things is something that people could pay for mentoring to get, and Tiamo is giving for free on this podcast. So those things are just so critical. And so Tiamo, all right, so we've got about 2 minutes, and so I'll do one question I've been wanting to ask my interviewees, and then we'll just have you tell the listeners where they can find out more about you. So we'll need like a 30 to 60 second response on this. And what is the best thing that has happened in your life, or the best, most recent thing that's happened in your life that just blew you away? It was life-changing, it was profound. What was that thing for you?
Well, I'm going to speak more recently.
Mm-hmm.
In understanding that my message is much more universal than I ever thought.
Mm-hmm.
Because we can oftentimes in marketing get very caught up in niche markets and target markets. And all these stories that I share and these lessons and the mentoring and coaching I love to do, I've found applies to so many people.
Yes.
And I've been hesitant on moving forward with that in a bigger way. Because I kind of like put myself in a box. Now it's been an amazing box. But I feel like I'm just understanding the unlimited potential for all of this, and that it can be for speakers, entrepreneurs, students, parents, kids, coaches, business owners, people who are in jobs who just want to do better jobs, people who are in jobs who want to get out of their jobs and do their passions, so that it's so much more universal. And I feel like I'm loving sharing that on a bigger stage. That's
awesome. I mean, I love to hear it, and I'm excited to see what's going to come next as you continue to develop even more. So everyone, that is Tiamo's story, from a college kid who took his intuition. He went to be a karaoke king in Virginia. He discovered his passion one day through a friend leaving a guitar, had a crushing blow to his passion and what he felt was his purpose, but then turned it all around. And so, Tiamo, if people want to come learn more about you, which I highly recommend they do, and guys, listen to his music because it comes from such a deep place and it is so emotional. I promise you it'll touch you. There's so many fantastic songs. Where should people come to find out more about you?
Well, there's, of course, a ton of websites that I have up, but the best one for my music and things like that is tiamomusic.com. So that's T as in Tom, I, A, M as in Mary, O, music.com.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And everyone, that is our show. To reiterate some points: purpose, not passion, and done is better than perfect. So, Tiamo, man, thank you so much. This has been awesome. I know people are going to get so much out of this, and I really appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thank you for your tremendous work and message in the world, and I look forward to staying connected, Brian.
Absolutely, man. And next time I'm out on the West Coast, I will let you know.
I'd love that.
All right, man. You have a great night.
All right, you too. See you later.
All right, bye.
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 Bye.